I hate autofocus so much. So, I don't know, I thought I'd just tell you guys a little story. When I was younger, in about 5th grade, there was this teacher that I had. His name was Mr. Miller. And I would say that these guys were like a fairly good like part of my life, you know. There was Mr. Miller, there was Mr. Roll, and then there was Miss Lawler. Uh, they were the like elective teachers at like my elementary. Miss Miller was the music, Miss Roll was art, and Miss Lawler was gym. And all three equally, they made my childhood one of the greatest things. Mr. Roll, he inspired me. Mr. Miller, he inspired me, and Miss Lawler inspired me. Basically, they all inspired me, and they all equally made me have aspirations to advance in certain things. That sometimes education isn't all that matters. And like these classes, extracurricular classes sometimes are like recess for a creative person. Uh, Whenever assigned like an assignment, like you have to do a what were those called? A recorder test, or you have to do a certain art style project, like a chalk and pastel, uh, like the pastels, those are like one of my favorite things. I got a picture somewhere, and here it is. Yeah, look, it's chalk. You can't really tell. It's pretty well uh seasoned, like a good slab of meat. It's been seasoned. I mean, it's like been worn. Um, so these three people in my life. Uh, Now bring it back to the point that I was trying to be at by not going off on a tangent like I just did. 5 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Miller, he would always tell us these great stories, and he would always show us these like cool things and all these. It was just amazing times. He was one of the greatest people ever, along with Miss Lawler and Mr. Roll. Mr. Roll, he looked like you ever watched the Home Improvement show? Like, I don't know, he kind of looked like him. Mr. Miller, he's kind of like bald. He was kind of like, I'm not sure what kind of race he was. I'd say he was either like mixed or like, I think he was mixed. And then Miss Lawler, she was like a old white lady. And Mr. Miller, though, he told us these great stories, and he would always tell us that. Well, he didn't tell us. Like, we would like ask him questions sometimes, and he would just like be like, "Hey, you know." And so we asked him, like, "What's your favorite time?" or like along those lines, and he said 5 o'clock in the morning. Because at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's when the birds are singing. When the birds are singing, it feels just beautiful, you know? Kind of feels like everything in the world is stopped and you're in this moment of beauty. And stress just disappears. Uh, I would say, personally, it's a different kind of story, but still similar in a way, you know? I'm not gonna call it a terrible story or whatever on my end. I would say, though, that 5 o'clock in the morning to me was this threshold that was accommodated with failure. And significantly through the past, like, 4, 5, 6 years even, I would even say that it was somewhat depressing. I have a very bad case of insomnia. This is probably weird, like most of you who know me, which probably makes up a good 90% of this channel. But yeah, I'm never at school, and it's a terrible thing that I have been acquainted with. It's a very poor decision on my end, but like, you have these times in your life that you don't know what you need to do. And for me, I'm always trying to do something. This is feeling a lot more deeper than it is. It's more like, from a realistic point of view, it's just some kid on the internet being dumb until 5, 6 in the morning, and then not going to school the next day. And most kids would be failing, but in my situation, I'm well. I try to. I'm on nasally. I try to do what I need to do. That most of the time works. Sometimes it doesn't at all. But most of the times, I try to find something new. I try to find something that nostalgically brings back memories. I try to do other stuff. Most of the time I get distracted and end up watching YouTube for about 5 hours. Or play video games on my computer, etc., etc. But when I get to doing something that isn't for my own benefit, such as watching YouTube videos, I feel a lot better about staying up, because I'm keeping myself occupied. You know, it's being occupied is a very strong thing to learn to do. Also, a very detrimental thing to do. The keeping occupied in the same way is the same of keeping things in. The same way that you keep things in, and you just put it off. You put it off, and you're like, oh, I'll have those sad thoughts later, basically. Or like, oh, I ain't trying to feel sad right now. So I'll watch YouTube, or I'll play video games, or I'll, I don't know, create a program, create a video, create a song, or a poem, or a rhyme, as I prefer to call them, because I don't like calling things that I do rap, because it has a negative stigma to it, and isn't really well received when you say it's something that is a rap. I like to do this because I feel my days are extended. Yet at the same time, I sleep the same amount of time that I'm basically awake. Well, it's a proportion, Like, oh, I'll be up for like 32 hours, and then I'll sleep for like 12. Or I'll sleep 16, or I'll sleep 18. I slept 18 in the past 2 months, maybe. I would say that I slept. I stayed awake for about like 46 hours, and then I slept for about 18 to 20 ish. Don't do that. It's very bad for your well-being, but at the same time, I'm not encouraging it. It gives you some sort of, the closest I can get to it is saying a high, but it's not a high as in you're feeling pleasure. It's a high as in your brain is a little bit more awake than you would think it would be. What time am I at? I got 24 seconds and 9 minutes. I'm good. I can keep talking. Um, Silence. I'm not. Why am I being quiet? This is a video. I don't want to keep you bored. Uh, and say I've been trying not to say So, and so. That's also a dumb one to say. Where was I at? The high that you feel at this point, it's stimulation of the brain, and it's a level that is satisfying your creativity, but also your learning capabilities. I would say that the test day, the times that I studied till 11 o'clock and woke up at 7 and then studied again at like 7. Yeah, because I only sleep for like a really small amount of time. Like, I'll sleep for like 6 hours whenever I go to bed normally, but like when, yada yada yada. Uh, the time I go to bed at like 10 or 11 and wake up at like 7 or 6 or something like that, and then study again then, I feel like I do, not necessarily poor on a test, but I don't feel the same confidence going in. But when I study till 3, 4 p.m. or 4 a.m. and then wake up right before I have to take the test on like third period, that's why I have direct study third period, on like fourth period or whatever, and then I wake up right before then, I feel like I'm awake. Not necessarily. I'm very drowsy at that point, but once I get awake and like, I brush my teeth and take a shower and all that, that's when I feel that I can remember things, and it's the stimulation of adrenaline in your brain that's like, oh, I have to study for this test, not the, oh, I woke up at 11 and I woke up again, or I went to sleep at 11 and studied for about 2 hours before I went to bed, and then I woke up at 7 and studied 2 hours then. And you're breaking it up versus the, oh, I'll do all of the studying right now, and then hopefully wake up when I need to, but if that doesn't happen, then I'll wake up before I need to take the test, and I'll take the test on time. But during that time of, oh crap, I have to be there right now, during that little time, I feel like I remember everything. Which is kind of detrimental, but for me, it doesn't matter whether I study well for a test or not. Usually with tests, I do pretty well. Not to gloat or anything, it's just I do kind of well on tests. Uh, that's gloating. I'm a D-bag. Okay, back to a story about being stimulated. During this time, I felt like I've written and produced some of my best work. Is when I've, you know, let's see, let's find a word for it. We'll describe it as awake, awakened creativity. Let's say that. During my time of awakened creativity, after I've stayed up for a longer period of time than I should be awake, during that time, I felt like I've created my best works. My computer went away. Turning it back on. My computer's doing this weird thing. It's like, oh, I'll go into sleep mode because it's between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock. JK. I said JK out loud. Just kidding. It's until like 7 o'clock when the alarm goes off. And it's pretty crazy. Let me check the time again. I got 5 minutes. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna just upload this like 20-minute file because I don't know. I haven't uploaded anything, and I have like so many videos backed up that I have no motivation for because I feel like they're not good videos, and they're similar to this kind of video to where I'll ramble and then I'll be like, I'm not gonna post this, or during it I'll be like, oh, I have to post this because I have people who watch and people who, you know, will listen sometimes, but it doesn't really matter if I don't ever get it on there. I've had videos that I've had so much preparation for. I've done a lot of nitty gritty file manipulation and editing and all this other stuff to make it just right. And I just put it on the back burner because I'm like, oh, nobody's gonna like that. It's a pretty crappy video. It's just that I'm distracting myself from producing. I'm distracting myself just because I feel it's not right. So, the same way that my teachers inspired me, they put it in my mind to just do it, It might not look good to this person, it might not look good to that person, but to this person, it's gold. And I'm not saying this video is gold, I'm just saying that some things that you do, there's gotta be at least one person that's like, hey, that's pretty good. There are, I don't know, many things that you do that are lackluster, and you're like, hey, that isn't well, or that's not good, and it could be better. And the it could be better should be words that have incentives combined with them, but they're not. They're more detrimental than they are helpful. I don't know a better word for helpful. I'm trying to use big vocabulary. Um, they're more or less they put you down rather than lifting you up. It could be better is something that you do to a final product. Not necessarily a final product. Call that a rough draft of that. And you can upload that and be like, hey, I found this, and this, and those errors. And then you fix that, and then you're like, hey, I'm kind of happy with this now. And kind of happy is better than, oh, I'm not going to post this because, it's trash. And, oh boy, I'm going to cry because it's not good enough. And so, yeah, if something's not good enough, make it better. That's not a very easy thing to do, or to say, or confidently say on my end, because some things that I will gloat about, or more or less, okay, I have a minute left. Okay, so the stuff that I gloat about, like on my channel, I have quality videos as the first thing that you see. Is so whenever I show somebody my channel, like on my phone or on their phone, I have an easy access to show the things that I was most inspired by myself, that I completed, and it was well, and it was actually like good. Even those videos, just simply because I didn't want to recreate them because they were so pure and they were so simple, and they were at a younger time when I was just starting out, and there's nothing new to show them about. I got 22 seconds. There wasn't nothing new to show them. There wasn't anything lately that I have done that isn't really on those standards. Like those videos compared to this video right now isn't really good. It's something that isn't like the tier. I want to be up here. I want to be tier up here. You guys are great. I'll talk to you later.